All right, last thing that we needed to talk about in class was converting radians to degrees and vice versa. So the key here is to, the key is to know that, all right, so this is 180 degrees, which is the same as pi radians. And then you could also say 360 degrees, right, if you go all the way around. And that's equal to 2 pi radians. You can use any one of these, but I tend to use the 180 degrees, right? So when you're converting things, you can always multiply anything by 1. So, like, if I want to convert, let's say 5 feet to inches, right? Inches, right? I can say, all right, I got 5 feet. I always put it over 1. I always create a fraction, right? And then I'm going to multiply this by really just 1, but I'm going to do it in different units. Feet's going to be on the bottom because I want them to cancel out, and then inches is going to be on top. But I need them to be the same thing. So I can say, well, 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. Now, although this isn't, it doesn't, 12 over 1 is not 1, but 12 inches is 1 foot. So if I said 12 inches divided by 1 foot, how many times does 1 foot go into 12 inches? It goes in 1 time because they're exactly the same, right? So this is essentially me multiplying it by 1. It doesn't look like 1, but it is 1. So then I can cancel out, Then I can cancel out my units, and I have 60 inches, right? The same, that's converting anything, right? So now we're going to convert, if I have degrees, so let's just say I have, some degrees. I'm going to put a question mark. I have some, then you see the degree symbol. Let me say degrees. Or let me put an X here instead of a question mark. So you have X degrees, and you want to convert that to radians, right? So I want this to end up being in radians. Well, I'm going to write it as a fraction, and then I'm going to multiply it by, I want degrees to cancel out, so I want degrees in the denominator. And what do I know about degrees in radians? I know 180 degrees is equal to pi radian. So the degrees would cancel out, and that would equal X times pi. So whatever X is, I'd multiply it by pi and then divide it by 180, and that would be radians. All right. What about if I had radians to begin with? So I had X radians, right? I'd still write it as a fraction over 1, and then I'd say, okay, I want to multiply it by 1, right? But 1 comes in many different forms. Well, I want it to make my radians cancel out, and I want to end up with degrees. So what do I know about radians and degrees? I know 180 degrees is equal to pi radians. Well, now the the radians cancel out, and all I'm left with is the degrees. So this would be X times 180 degrees divided by pi. And that would be in degrees. So a lot of people try to memorize formulas for this. Really what you need to memorize is this, that pi is equal to 180, and then just think about how to convert things. Memorization will leave you not understanding things. If there's a kink in your, memory, then everything falls apart. If you understand conversions, and then you understand the fact that half of a circle is called pi, then you can get the rest. So let's do some examples here. 250 degrees, right? We want to convert them to radians. So this is, first I'm writing it as a fraction. And then I'm saying, all right, I want my degrees to cancel out, which means I'm going to multiply it by degrees in the denominator. And I know 180 degrees is equal to pi radians. The degrees cancel, right? So I got 250 pi over 180. And then this is in radians. That's the only unit I have. Now I'm going to put this in my calculator. So I'm going to say 250 pi divided by 180. When I do that, most of the time, let me see. Let me just say 250 divided by 180. Yeah, I guess that made sense. So there's different ways to write your answer. So you can say this is, you could say this is 4.36, 3, and this number keeps going forever. Radians, you could say that. Most of the time we just put pi on it. So I just say 25 divided by 18 pi. And then we're talking about radians. Okay, let's go to this one. Now, if I know that pi is 180, so I know that 2 pi is 360, but we're going to do this anyway. So I know the answer is automatically, it's going to be negative 2 pi radians. But let's see if this, our process works out. So negative 360 degrees, right? I'm over 1. I want my degrees to cancel out, so I'm going to say 180 degrees in the denominator and pi and radians in the numerator. Now the degrees cancels, and then 180, that's just half of 360, so I can say that's 2. So this becomes negative 2 pi, and then we're talking about radians. All right, 64, same process, right? Doesn't matter if there's a negative sign or a positive sign. 64 degrees over 1 times 180 degrees over pi radian. So the degrees cancel out, and I got 64 over, so I'm going to try to write it in fractions. So 64 over 180 gives me 16/45, right? So one way I could write my answer, 16/45 pi radian. All right. I could also write it as a decimal if I wanted to, and I'd just say 16/45 or 16 pi divided by 45, and I could get 1.117, and this thing goes on forever, radian. So you don't have to write radian, but I'm just writing it because I don't want you to get it confused. So basically, for degrees, you're going to see 150 degrees, right? You'll see that degree symbol. For radians, you could see, let's say I was saying 2 pi. Now, you could see me write radians and RAD, and you would know. But you could also just see 2 pi and nothing. And that would also suggest radians. So if you don't see a unit, no unit, it's understood that it's in radians. So be careful with that. I'm not going to do them next. I'm not going to do those. I think you'd be fine doing it. I will convert these, though. So convert each radian measure to degree measures, right? So it's already written as a fraction. I guess we'll do this one. Now, you can write radian if you want, but if it helps you, sure, we'll do that. I would say begin doing that. And always, if it's not there, put it in the numerator, right? So I want my radians in the denominator so they cancel out. So I put pi radians and then 180 degrees, right? When my radian cancels out with my radian, my pi cancels out with my pi. So now I have, this is equal to negative 11 times 180 divided by 6, and then we're talking about degrees, right? So you just you know, negative 11 times 180 divided by 6 gives me, that's negative 330 degrees. Again, right, times, if you want to write radian to help you understand which one you're going to be canceling out, like, hey, this is in radians in the numerator, let me say radian in the denominator. I know pi, and then I know 180 degrees. The radian cancels out, the pi cancels out, and now we have 180 degrees divided by 2, which is 90 degrees. So pi over 2 is the same as 90 degrees. And then we'll do one more. We might as well do number 5. Right, so radian. I'm multiplying by radian in the denominator. Pi radian is 180 degrees. The radians cancel. The pi cancels. I got, you know, negative 3 times 180 degrees divided by 10. Right? And that just is the same thing as, what, 3 times 18? So, but I'm going to just enter it in. Negative 3 times 180 divided by 10 gives me negative 54 degrees. All right. Now you know. Is there anything else? Nope. All right, guys, that's it.